A high school girl decides she wants extra cash to buy clothes. She walks all over town trying to find a job for someone her age. She meets three men. The first man is short, stocky, and has a red beard. He offers her a job gutting fish. She wrinkles her pretty nose and says, "No thank you, I don't like the smell." The second man has a purple jumpsuit on and black Adidas. He offers her a job coaching a middle school track team. She wrinkles her pretty nose and says, "No thank you, I don't like the smell." The third man is tall and skinny, wearing a big trench coat and with a greasy, slicked-down mustache. He offers her a job doing kinky knee videos for a very niche crowd of viewers. She has a very pretty set of knees, so she agrees. She excels tremendously at her job and within weeks has hundreds of guys paying her for simple videos of her knees. The only issue is she's up all night making them. She can't sleep. She comes down for breakfast one day with black bags under her eyes, and her dad says, "Honey, you absolutely need to get some sleep." She replies, "I can't. I'm in some knee act." One day, a florist went to a barber for a haircut. After the cut, he asked about his bill, and the barber replied, "I cannot accept money from you. I'm doing community service this week." The florist was pleased and left the shop. When the barber went to open his shop the next morning, there was a thank you card and a dozen roses waiting for him at his door. Later, a cop comes in for a haircut, and when he tries to pay his bill, the barber again replied, "I cannot accept money from you. I'm doing community service this week." The cop was happy and left the shop. The next morning, when the barber went to open up, there was a thank you card and a dozen donuts waiting for him at his door. Then a member of parliament came in for a haircut, and when he went to pay his bill, the barber again replied, "I cannot accept money from you. I'm doing community service this week." The member of parliament was very happy and left the shop. The next morning, when the barber went to open up, there were a dozen members of parliament lined up waiting for a free haircut. And that, my friends, illustrates the fundamental difference between the citizens of our country and the politicians who run it. If you don't forward this, you have no sense of humor. A Texan walks into a pub in Ireland and clears his voice to the crowd of drinkers. He says, "I hear you Irish are a bunch of hard drinkers. I'll give $500 American dollars to anybody in here who can drink 10 pints of Guinness back to back." The room is quiet and no one takes up the Texan's offer. One man even leaves. 30 minutes later, the same gentleman who left shows back up and taps the Texan on the shoulder. "Is your bet still good?" asks the Irishman. The Texan says yes and asks the bartender to line up 10 pints of Guinness. Immediately, the Irishman tears into all 10 of the pint glasses, drinking them all back to back. The other pub patrons cheer as the Texan sits in amazement. The Texan gives the Irishman the $500 and says, "If you don't mind me asking, where did you go for those 30 minutes you were gone?" The Irishman replies, "Oh, I had to go to the pub down the street to see if I could do it first." One day, Harry came upon a big, long ladder that stretched into the clouds. He'd walked this way every day, and this ladder was never there before. Curious and brave, he began to climb. Eventually, he climbed into the layer of clouds and saw this rather large, homely woman lying there on a cloud. She spoke, "Take me now or climb the ladder to success." Harry figured success had to be better than this, so he continued climbing. He came upon another level of clouds and found a thinner, cuter woman than before. She also spoke, "Take me now or climb the ladder to success." Harry saw that his luck was changing and so continued his climb. On another level of clouds, he found a rather attractive woman with not so bad of a figure. She stated, "Take me now or climb the ladder to success." Harry really liked his advantage now. He climbed quickly and deftly, and sure enough, on the next level he found a gorgeous, lithe, well-endowed woman lying seductively on the cloud. "Take me now, or climb the ladder to success," she huskily whispered. Harry couldn't believe his eyes, but his greed caught the best of him. He climbed to the next level, expecting Aphrodite or something similar. Suddenly, the ladder ends, and a latch closes behind him. He looks over to see a 400-pound, 6'8 inches hairy biker-looking guy with tattoos. The biker gets up and walks menacingly toward Harry. Apprehensively, Harry whispers, "Who are you?" The biker answers, "I'm Sess." Two 90-year-old women, Rose and Barb, had been friends all of their lives. When it was clear that Rose was dying, Barb visited her every day. One day, Barb said, "Rose, we both loved playing women's softball all our lives, and we played all through high school. Please do me one favor. When you get to heaven, somehow, you must let me know if there's women's softball there." Rose looked up at Barb from her deathbed and said, "Barb, you've been my best friend for many years. If it's at all possible, I'll do this favor for you." Shortly after that, Rose passed on. At midnight a few nights later, Barb was awakened from a sound sleep by a blinding flash of white light and a voice calling out to her. "Barb, Barb." "Who is it?" asked Barb, sitting up suddenly. "Who is it?" "Barb, it's me, Rose." "You're not Rose. Rose just died." "I'm telling you it's me, Rose," insisted the voice. "Rose, where are you?" "In heaven," replied Rose. "I have some really good news and a little bad news." "Tell me the good news first," said Barb. "The good news," Rose said, "is that there's softball in heaven. Better yet, all of our old buddies who died before us are here too. Better than that, we're all young again. Better still, it's always springtime, and it never rains or snows, and best of all, we can play softball all we want and we never get tired." "That's fantastic," said Barb. "It's beyond my wildest dreams. So what's the bad news? You're pitching Tuesday." Three women are sick of their boss always leaving work early on a Tuesday one Tuesday. They all agree to wait 20 minutes after the boss has left, then sneak out themselves. Their boss would never know. The brunette left and decided to go shopping. The redhead decided to hit the gym before meeting some friends for drinks. The blonde decided to go home and surprise her husband. But when she arrived home, she heard noises in the bedroom. She slowly walked up, peeked through the door, and saw her husband in bed with her boss. Mortified, she closed the door and crept out of the house. The next day, back at work, the girls met up and discussed if they should all skip out early again next week. "No way," said the blonde. "Yesterday I almost got caught." Three men get lost in the jungle and stumble upon a tribe of cannibals. They're captured and dragged before the chief, who gives them a chance to avoid becoming dinner. "If you want to live," the chief says, "you must complete a challenge. Go into the jungle, find 10 of the same fruit, and bring them back. Then you'll face the true test." The men agree and head off separately. The first man returns with 10 apples. The chief tells him, "To earn your freedom, you must fit all 10 into your mouth without making a sound or dropping any." The man manages 6, barely squeezes in a 7th, but on the 8th, an apple slips. The tribe drags him off and kills him. Soon after, the second man arrives with 10 blueberries. The chief gives the same command. He gets to 8, 9, and just as he's about to finish, he bursts out laughing and drops them. As he's sent to the afterlife, he meets the first guy in heaven. The first man says, "Dude, you had blueberries. How did you mess that up?" The second guy, still chuckling, says, I know, I had it. But then I saw the third guy walking up with 10 watermelons." 4 best friends graduate from college and promise to meet up with each other once every 10 years, despite taking different paths in lives. When they're all 35 years old, they discuss where they should meet up. One friend suggests they should go to the cabin located at the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because it had the best food in all of America. So they all go. When they're all 45, they discuss it again and again and decide to go to the same cabin at the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because the town had the best fishing lake in all of America. When they're 55, they discuss it again only to go to the same town because the town had the best hookers in all of America. When they're all 65, they go to the same town because it hosted the best barbecue fest in all of America. When they're all 75, they decide to go to the same town because one friend suggested it would be perfect because it was the most peaceful town in all of America. When they're all 85, after deep discussion, no one could think of a place to go. But then a friend suggested they go to a cabin in the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because none of them had ever been there before. It was George the mailman's last day on the job after 35 years of carrying the mail through all kinds of weather to the same neighborhood. When he arrived at the first house on his route, He was greeted by the whole family, who congratulated him and sent him on his way with a tidy gift envelope. At the second house, they presented him with a box of fine cigars. The folks at the third house handed him a selection of terrific fishing lures. At the fourth house, he was met at the door by a strikingly beautiful blonde woman in a revealing negligee. She took him by the hand, gently led him through the door, which she closed behind him, and took him up the stairs to the bedroom, where she blew his mind with the most passionate love he had ever experienced. When he had enough, they went downstairs and she fixed him a giant breakfast: eggs, potatoes, ham, sausage, blueberry waffles, and fresh squeezed orange juice. When he was truly satisfied, she poured him a cup of steaming coffee. As she was pouring, he noticed a dollar bill sticking out from under the cup's bottom edge. "All this was just too wonderful for words," he said. "But what's the dollar for?" "Well," she said, "last night I told my husband that today would be your last day and that we should do something special for you. I asked him what to give you. He said, 'Screw him. Give him $1. The breakfast was my idea.'" A little boy wants his toy, so he walks up to his mother and says, "Mom, give me my toy." His mother responds by saying, "What are the magic words?" So the little boy says the magic words, and his mom gives him his toy. The next day, the little boy starts kindergarten. At snack time, the little boy wants some juice, so he walks up to his teacher and asks for a juice box. The teacher says, "What are the magic words?" So the little boy says the magic words, but the teacher gets upset and calls the little boy's mother and asks her to come in. When the three of them are sitting in the room together, the teacher asks the mother, "Have you been teaching your son sarcasm?" "No." The mother says, "Why? What did he do?" "Well, he asked for a juice," said the teacher. "And I asked him to say the magic words, and instead of saying please, he said, 'You're thin and you're beautiful.'" When Donna found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She shared the news with family, friends, and even strangers, anyone who would listen. But what she didn't realize was that her 4-year-old son had been listening too. One afternoon, while out shopping, a friendly woman bent down and smiled at the little boy. "Are you excited about the new baby?" she asked. His eyes lit up. "Yes," he said proudly. "And I already know what we're going to name it," the woman chuckled. "Oh, and what name have you picked?" The boy grinned and announced, "If it's a girl, we're going to call her Christina, and if it's another boy, we're going to call it Quits." A man sat on the edge of the bed watching his wife admire herself in the mirror. Her birthday was just around the corner, so he asked gently, "What would you like this year, honey?" Without missing a beat, she said, "I wish I was 8 again." The next morning, he sprang into action. He made her a giant bowl of chocolate cereal just like kids eat. Then he whisked her off to the wildest amusement park in town. Every ride, she rode it, twice. The Loop of Doom, the Gut Twister, the Mega Scream, all of them. After 5 hours of whiplash and motion sickness, he treated her to McDonald's, a Happy Meal, a chocolate shake, the works. Still not done, he surprised her with movie tickets to the loudest superhero blockbuster in theaters. Popcorn, soda, M&Ms, everything a sugar-crazed 8-year-old could want. By the end of the day, she could barely walk. She flopped onto the bed like a jellyfish in heels. With a proud smile, he leaned in and said, "So, did you enjoy being 8 again?" She opened one eye, groaned, and muttered, "I meant my dress size, you goofball." Every Friday night after work, Bubba would fire up his grill and cook some delicious venison steaks. But all of Bubba's neighbors were Catholic, and during Lent, they couldn't eat meat on Fridays. The mouth-watering aroma of Bubba's steaks was causing quite the stir, so they decided to talk to their priest. The priest came over to Bubba's house and suggested, "Bubba, why don't you become Catholic? That'll solve the problem." So Bubba went through some classes, studied hard, and finally attended Mass. As the priest sprinkled holy water over him, he said, "You were born a Baptist, raised a Baptist, but now you are a Catholic." The neighbors were thrilled. Finally, peace. But when Friday night came around, that familiar smell of grilled venison filled the air again. The neighbors were furious. They called the priest, and he rushed over, ready to give Bubba a stern talking to. But when he got to the backyard, he froze. There was Bubba, standing by the grill, holding a small bottle of holy water. He carefully sprinkled the meat and said, "You were born a deer, you were raised a deer, but now you are a catfish." A group of 11 blonde girls strolled up to a banana seller's cart. "Can we get 11 bananas, please?" one of them asked sweetly. The seller scratched his head and replied, "Sorry, ladies, I can't sell less than a dozen." The blondes huddled together, whispering for a moment. Finally, one of them threw her hands up and said, "Fine, just give us 12. We'll eat one on the way." One day, Federico Fellini made a bet with his screenwriter friend that he couldn't come up with a script for a 10-second film. "You'll never pull it off, my friend," Fellini said with a grin. "It just can't be done." His friend, Tonino Guerra, raised an eyebrow. "If you're ready to part with $12, Federico, I say let's bet. Tomorrow, I'll bring you a script." "Deal," Fellini smirked. $12 wouldn't hurt right now. He was convinced he had the bet in the bag. Later, Guerra admitted that he nearly panicked that evening. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't crack it. The challenge wasn't just to tell a story, it had to be a full-fledged short film. Setup, climax, and a twist ending, all within 10 seconds. Impossible. Until inspiration struck sometime past midnight. The next morning, Fellini took one look at his friend's tired face and asked, "You got my $12, Tonino?" "Hold on," Guerra replied. "I brought the script." He handed over a single sheet of paper. Fellini unfolded it and read, "A woman is watching TV. A rocket launch countdown begins. 10, 9, 8. Her face is full of nervous tension. She grabs the phone and dials. 7, 6, 5. We stay on her face. 4, 3, 2, 1. The rocket blasts off. She speaks into the receiver. "You can come now. He's gone." Fellini didn't say a word. He quietly reached into his wallet and handed Guerra $12. The story Guerra wrote was a perfect little movie, pure Italian dark comedy in the spirit of the golden era of cinema. Only one character appears on screen, yet we understand there are 3. The woman, her husband, blasting off into space, and the lover she's just invited over. The countdown gives it suspense. The twist gives it punch. That's what true screenwriting brilliance looks like. So we got invited to this big birthday dinner at a nice restaurant. Kind of a milestone celebration. About 60 people there. Friends, co-workers, relatives, most of whom we didn't know at all. Huge, long table. We found our assigned seats and sat down. I started introducing myself to folks nearby. "Hey, I'm Stan," I said to the guy across from me, maybe in his 50s. Before he could respond, the woman next to him jumped in. "His name's Mark," she said flatly. Mark just nodded and shook my hand in silence. Then someone across the table raised their glass and said, "Let's toast the birthday guy." I grabbed a bottle and started pouring for folks around me. When I got to Mark's glass, he reached for it, but before he could even touch it. "Mark doesn't drink. He has gastritis," the woman cut in sharply, giving me a judgmental look. Mark pretended to reach for some bread instead. You could see the sadness in his eyes. "Put the bread down, Mark," she snapped. "Your cholesterol's too high." He slowly placed it back and glanced at his watch. Appetizers arrived. Salads, pickles, the works. She surveyed the spread, then declared, "Mark, those salads are probably full of mayo. Who knows how old they are? You have a sensitive stomach. Just eat a cucumber." She plopped a single cucumber slice onto his plate. "And leave the tomato. You're allergic." Meanwhile, she loaded up her own plate. Salad, bread, herring, deviled eggs. The full feast. "I've got a strong stomach," she announced proudly. "And someone pour me a shot of vodka." Mark chewed his cucumber, drank his water, checked his watch again. She ate and drank like a queen. At some point, I started chatting with the guy sitting next to Mark about some movie. We were getting into it, and I turned to Mark. "You seen that film?" Mark opened his mouth. "He hasn't," she answered for him. "We've been watching From Love to Love. It's a series. We're on episode 547. Mark loves it." Mark looked at her, then his watch. Later, when we were all talking about work, she piped up again. "Mark's not working right now. He injured his finger at work. It's been 2 weeks. He's on medical leave." Dinner arrived. She piled everything onto her plate, then looked at him. "Mark, that meat's too greasy. You're on a diet. And put the Coke back. Your blood sugar's high." She turned to the rest of us. "Mark's sugar is too high," she repeated, like it was some kind of public service announcement. People nearby were clearly starting to notice the dynamic. "Free Mark," someone whispered from down the table. "Let the man go pee at least," someone else added. Could have been me. "Hey, let's step out for a smoke," a guy suggested. "Mark doesn't smoke," she answered. "He had bronchitis as a kid. He coughs too much." Mark stared at his watch for 30 solid seconds. Then suddenly, with total calm, he said, "That's it. Guys, pour me a shot, would you? I'm going to eat now." He grabbed a heap of salad, meat, and even the Coke. "We'll drink, and then we're going out for a smoke." Everyone froze. The guy next to him jumped. I nearly choked. Someone whispered, "Sweet Jesus," and kissed their Star of David. The woman blinked, then smiled. "Is it 8 o'clock already?" "You clever boy, Mark." She kissed his cheek. "Eat up, sunshine, eat up." We were stunned. Pure surreal. Later, outside in the smoking area, Mark explained, "Yeah, I lost a bet. My Nina and I play these wager games. We've been doing it for like 20 years. This time I had to stay quiet and agree with everything she said until 8 p.m. He took a drag from his cigarette. "You think that's bad? Last time she lost, she had to go to her co-worker's wedding with no makeup, wearing flip-flops and an old dress. That was brutal." Some guy nearby shook his head and muttered, "Man, I live such a boring life," then quietly walked away from the group. P.S. Later that night, Mark and Nina both got hammered and basically turned the dance floor into a strip show. Guess they lost another bet, maybe dominoes, maybe bowling. All I know is those two know how to party. There was a lad named John who was dealt a bad hand since he was born. He was an orphan who was brought up in a for-profit orphanage, leading him to suffer mental trauma, among other issues. After turning 16, he was kicked out of the orphanage with no support whatsoever. Not knowing what to do, resorted to a life of crime to keep him off the streets, and for a while, he was quite successful. This was because he was stealthy, very much so. He would walk around barefoot in order to not make a sound, putting on his shoes after committing his crimes. Some of the most spectacular bank robberies and museum heists were carried out by himself on his own. However, after an illustrious criminal career, he was finally uncovered by law enforcement and caught, eventually getting sentenced to 20 years in jail. He was restricted to a maximum security prison but was given access to medical help, as his years spent barefoot on broken glass and the like meant that he had calluses and corns all over his feet and toes. The doctor provided him with a device that drew out moisture for John to use on his injuries. John immediately loved the device, and a daily activity for him was to use it on the gigantic corns on his toes, seeing that leisurely activities were severely restricted on the account that it was a maximum security prison. However, John quickly noticed that the prison's power supply cut off in the middle of the night during lights out, after which he could not use his electrically powered dryer. The next morning, he complained to the jail warden. The jail warden, upon hearing this, decided to hook the dryer up to a gigantic battery pack that would be more than enough to last John through the week. John was elated. Soon night fell and the power was out. John wanted to use his dryer but quickly realized that he couldn't see clearly due to the darkness of the cell. He quickly found the electrical wiring system and, having tinkered with appliances during his stint as a criminal, hooked up his device to the mains. The lights in his cell lit up, catching the attention of the prison warden. The prison warden asked John how he did it, to which John promptly replied, "My toe corn dryer is the powerhouse of the cell." A guy decides to host a party where guests are asked to come dressed as different emotions. On the night of the party, the first guest arrives. The host opens the door and sees a man covered in green paint, with the letters N and V painted on his chest. "Wow, great outfit. What emotion have you come as?" the host asks. The man replies, "I'm green with envy." The host laughs. "Brilliant, come on in and have a drink." A few minutes later, the next guest arrives. The host opens the door and sees a woman covered in a pink body stocking with a feather boa wrapped around her most intimate parts. "Wow, great outfit. What emotion have you come as?" the host asks again. She replies, "I'm tickled pink." The host chuckles. "I love it. Come on in and join the party." A couple of minutes later, the doorbell rings again. The host opens the door and is shocked to see two Irish men, Paddy and Mick, standing there stark naked. One has his intimate part in a bowl of custard, and the other has his in a pear. The host, stunned, says, "What on earth are you two doing? You can't be standing like that on the street, and what emotion is this supposed to be?" Paddy looks at the host and says, "Well, I'm fucking disgusted, and Mick here. He's just come in to spare." A farmer goes out one day and buys a brand new stud rooster for his chicken coop. The new rooster struts over to the old rooster and says, "Okay, old fart, time for you to retire." The old rooster replies, "Come on, surely you cannot handle all of these chickens. Look what it has done to me. Can't you just let me have the two old hens over in the corner?" The young rooster says, "Beat it. You are washed up and I am taking over." The old rooster says, "I tell you what, young stud, I will race you around the farmhouse. Whoever wins gets the exclusive domain over the entire chicken coop." The young rooster laughs. "You know you don't stand a chance, old man, so just to be fair, I will give you a head start." The old rooster takes off running. About 15 seconds later, the young rooster takes off running after him. They round the front porch of the farmhouse, and the young rooster has closed the gap. He is already about 5 feet behind the old rooster and gaining fast. The farmer, meanwhile, is sitting in his usual spot on the front porch when he sees the roosters running by. He grabs his shotgun and boom blows the young rooster to bits. The farmer sadly shakes his head and says, "Damn it, third gay rooster I bought this month." A woman in a hot air balloon realized she was lost. She spotted a man in a boat below and lowered her altitude, then shouted to him, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man consulted his portable GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon, approximately 30 feet above a ground elevation of 2346 feet above sea level. You are at 31 degrees, 14.97 minutes north latitude and 100 degrees, 49.09 minutes west longitude." She rolled her eyes and said, "You must be a Republican." "Yes, I am," replied the man. "How did you know?" "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to do with your information, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help to me." The man smiled and responded, "You must be a Democrat." "I am," replied the balloonist. "How did you know?" "Well," said the man, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You've risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise that you have no idea how to keep, and you expect me to solve your problem. You're in exactly the same position you were before we met, but somehow now it's my fault." A young monk arrives at the monastery. He is assigned to helping the other monks in copying the old canons and laws of the church by hand. He notices, however, that all of the monks are copying from copies, not from the original manuscript. So the new monk goes to the old abbot to question this, pointing out that if someone made even a small error in the first copy, it would never be picked up. In fact, that error would be continued in all of the subsequent copies. The head monk says, "We have been copying from the copies for centuries, but you make a good point, my son." He goes down into the dark caves underneath the monastery where the original manuscripts are held as archives in a locked vault that hasn't been opened for hundreds of years. Hours go by and nobody sees the old abbot, so the young monk gets worried and goes down to look for him. He sees him banging his head against the wall and wailing, "We missed the R! We missed the R! We missed the bloody R!" His forehead is all bloody and bruised, and he is crying uncontrollably. The young monk asks the old abbot, "What's wrong, father?" With a choking voice, the old abbot replies, "The word was celebrate." NASA was interviewing professionals to be sent to Mars. Only one could go, and he couldn't return to Earth. The first applicant, an engineer, was asked how much he wanted to be paid for going. $1 million, he answered, "because I want to donate it to MIT. The next applicant, a doctor, was asked the same question. He asked for $2 million. "I want to give $1 million to my family," he explained. and leave the other $1 million for the advancement of medical research. The last applicant was a politician. When asked how much money he wanted, he whispered in the interviewer's ear, $3 million. Why so much more than the others? The interviewer asked. The politician replied, if you give me $3 million, I'll give you $1 million, I'll keep $1 million, and we'll send the engineer.